Welcome back, everyone. Let's go ahead and take a look at the Google Pixel 6a and compare it against the Google Pixel 4a, and I guess see which one is the better one, but it's quite obvious. The Pixel 6a is the better one in almost every single area, but the Pixel 4a, I think, was the originator of so many cool things from Google, and although the 3a was before this one, I think the 4a kind of fixed a lot of the things that we didn't like about the 3a, and I'm actually really happy Google made the 4a, to be honest. Now, if you want to pick either one of these phones, links will be down in the description. You can get them from there. You can help support the channel at the same time. Now, interestingly enough, Google sent me both of these phones, this one back in 2020 and this one right now. And what's very interesting is I like the 4A. I think it had a bigger impact than the 6A, but the 6A is a crazy cool phone too. Now, with the 4A on the front, we had a 5.8-inch OLED display. Now, one thing I liked about this specific phone was that it was a 1080p panel and it was a hole punch display. With the 3A, I liked it was OLED or something like that display too. Unfortunately, I think that one was like 720p and it had a pretty big amount of bezel around it. And this one, from a 2020 phone, it looks just like the Pixel 5, and honestly, it doesn't even look cheap from the front. Unfortunately, it does look kind of cheap, and it is a pretty cheap phone from the sides, but it's still a pretty good looking phone from the front. With the Pixel 6a, on the other hand, this is almost like a flagship as of this point. It's a 6.1-inch OLED display, and I will say the panel, it's not its biggest strong suit compared to the 4A. I feel like both these phones are very similar. But what's super crazy to me is how premium this phone is otherwise. Now, when this phone came out, I think it was $349, the 4A. The Pixel 6a right now is $449, so it is a little bit more expensive than the retail value of the 4A, but the 4A you can get in the used market for substantially cheaper than what it is being sold for right now, so please keep that in mind. Now, in terms of the thinness and thickness between these two phones, I will say kind of the same thing. I think the 4A is probably a little bit thinner when it comes down to it, but they're pretty much kind of the same build. Nothing up top except for the 4A does have a headphone jack right there, which is cool. USB Type-C port on the bottom of the 4A. And on the back, and this is the interesting thing. So the 4A was primarily built out of plastic. It's not a deal breaker by any means, but I do like for its price tag, it was understandable. The fingerprint sensor right here, but completely built out of plastic and a single camera setup in the top left corner. On the Pixel 6a, on the other hand, this is probably one of its biggest achievements. You have a full-on glass back with this device, which feels very premium and it looks very premium as well. It looks almost like the Pixel 6. And you also have a dual camera setup on this phone too. So that is really cool. Now, the 6A also has IP certification, which is really cool, and that kind of covers it up for, to be completely honest. Overall, the better phone when it comes down to both of these is a Pixel 6a. I mean, that is a much better upgrade than what the Pixel 4a is, and if you have a Pixel 4a, I think going up to the 6a is actually a pretty decent upgrade that's probably going to be giving you a much better phone than what the 4a is currently. Now, that kind of covers it up there. In terms of the software and longevity between them and how long these phones are going to last, the Pixel 4a is actually still supported with software, and I do have Android 13, the beta, on here too. I think that is probably going to be its last software version, though. I don't think it's going to last much longer than Android 13, which is totally okay and it's totally understandable. So this phone had a pretty long lifespan. I'm pretty happy for it being a budget tier phone, and it still gets day one updates, so whenever the Pixel 6 will get an update, and this one will also get an update, which is so cool. The Pixel 6a, on the other hand, because it is a newer phone, it's going to be lasting a longer amount of time, technically speaking, but also I think Google said 3 years of security, 3 years of full OS updates, and a year of security updates on top of that. So that this phone's going to be lasting for quite a bit of time. So we're going to be seeing a lot of this specific phone, and I cannot wait for this phone to kind of be matured probably in the next few years. So in terms of that kind of covers it up there as well. Now let's go into a speed comparison between both these phones. The Pixel 4a has that Snapdragon 730G chipset inside of it with 6GB of RAM on this phone, where the Pixel 6a has that Google Tensor chipset inside of it, so a little bit of an upgrade there with 6GB of RAM as well. So let's go see which one is the faster phone between both of these. Okay, all the apps are cleared out in the background, as you guys can tell. So, except for this one. So let's clear them all out here. As you can see, they're all cleared out. So let's get into it. 4A is here, 6A is here. Let's go and get into phone calls, 3, 2, 1. And I think the Pixel 6a is slightly faster, but it was actually pretty close. Let's get into messages, 3, 2, 1. I think the Pixel 6a was slightly faster there too. Play Store, 3, 2, 1. And that one was actually the Pixel 4a, but I do remember the Pixel 6a is not connected to Wi-Fi right now, so that may be a little bit of a big deal there. Camera, 3, 2, 1. 6a again is the faster one there. Let's go and take a photo. And let's go and get into this photo right here. And you can even see right there, smoother experience loading into the photo on the Pixel 6a than on the Pixel 4a. So definitely keep that in mind. As always, we have a bunch of these third-party apps. Facebook, 3, 2, 1. Pixel 4a is slightly faster there. Snapchat, 3, 2, 1. And I think the Pixel, and they were kind of on two different panels. Dropbox 321. Pretty much the same exact thing. Snake vs. Blocks 321. I will say the Pixel 6a is kind of the smoother experience. It's also the faster one, at least more times than not, than the Pixel 4a. But the 4a has also been a little bit faster here and there. Getting into this game, let's see if there's a difference. And you can see kind of the same thing, but I think the Pixel 6a kind of glitched up a little bit less. Hopping out of here, let's do Stack, which I do not have here. Quizlet 321. Almost the exact same thing as well, not that big of a difference. Temple Run 2, 3, 2, 1. So both are on the loading panels at the bottom, so luckily we didn't have a downloading content thing. And we can see that the Pixel 6a does look to be a little bit faster than the Pixel 4a. So I think this is a good thing. We want the newer phones to be an overall faster device than the older ones, and you're getting a decent upgrade in performance. It's not like a groundbreaking thing. I feel like when it comes down to both these phones, they're both pretty decent, but the Pixel 6a is probably going to be giving you a better performing phone when it actually comes down to it. We can test probably a few more things, but I think everyone kind of gets the idea. Clock 321. Again, Pixel 6a is the faster one. Let's go and get into contacts. 3, 2, 1. Again, contacts is faster on the Pixel 6a as well. We can go and get into something like, calculator 3, 2, 1. And even for apps like this, it's faster on, something like the Pixel 6a than on the Pixel 4a. So in terms of the speed comparison, 6a is faster. 4a is still a fast phone for its price tag, but it's definitely not beating out the Pixel 6a, at least as far as I can tell. Now, in terms of the actual camera setup, this is very interesting because this is also probably one of the bigger differences between the Pixel 4a and the 6a. The 4a had a single 12 megapixel camera, it was 12.2 megapixels, and it wasn't a bad camera by any means, but for its price tag, it was understandable. The 6a, on the other hand, has a dual camera setup, a wide and an ultra wide sensor. You have the ability of doing 4K at 60 and 1080p on the front and the back of the Pixel 6a, 1080p on the front, 4K at 60 on the back. The 4a could only do 1080p on the front and 4K at 30 on the back, so definitely keep that in mind. I've always felt like with the Pixel 4a camera, though, for its price tag, it really wasn't that bad, and I was a fan of it for its price. I will say the camera really isn't competing with anybody else, but for its price tag, it's totally understandable. Now, you do have things like the standard camera mode. You do have portrait mode built into this camera as well. You have standard video mode too, which is really cool. And you have this modes option, which is very similar on the 6a. Now, both these phones have the same issue that I talk about all the time. Zooming in and out, it's a little bit of a glitchy experience. I've talked about this several times, but that's kind of just what happens. But I think at the end of the day, if you're using this phone as a basic camera type of setup, I think it's a pretty good camera. You have you have quite a bit of capability for this type of camera. You can always download apps. But the big thing is the price tag. The fact that this phone is priced at where it is, I think that's a pretty big deal. With the Pixel 6a, on the other hand, you are getting a better camera setup overall. This thing is a much better camera than the Pixel 4a, which is good because this is a better phone. It's a better phone. It's more expensive, so it's understandable. I will say the jump from a 4a to the 6a, it's a pretty big jump. But the jump to the 4a to the 5a was also a pretty big jump as well. So keep that in mind. I will say this one for a Pixel is really good, but it's still not competing with Samsung. I feel like Samsung still does a much better job with their camera setup, but this thing overall still takes really good photos. And if you're going through and you're using, things like portrait mode, using things like the standard video modes option over here, you're getting a better camera setup overall in the 6a, but I think the 4a is still pretty good overall, and that kind of sums up this video, to be honest. I feel like the Pixel 6a is overall the better phone when it comes down to it. This one is a pretty big upgrade coming from the 4a. You're getting a better display, better build quality, better cameras, better battery life, better pretty much everything, a longer lasting phone here too. But I don't think that's a knock to the 4a. I think the 4a was a pretty good phone that Google made. I'm really happy they made this device. I think it still has a ton of capability built in within it, and it's really only going to be done when it gets unsupported with software. And even then, if people want to continue to support it, I think that'd be great. I think the design of this thing for $349 was really good. I'm glad they're kind of stepping into the 6a price tag now too, but I think when it comes down to it, the 6a is better, but the 4a is still a really good phone as well, and I love this phone a lot too. So that kind of covers it up. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.